Okay, so who's heard of the Caldor fire? Yeah, that's is it out yet? Almost out. Man, lot of devastation, a lot of issues, a lot of impact that kind of you miss. And part of it is, there's animals and stuff that are out there that for one reason or another, you can't throw your horse in the back of your car as you're escaping the flames. And there's quite an effort going on in Eldorado County to help out to take care of the rest of the civilization up there, not all of which has two legs. So, Amir, come on up. N6ADL was part of that rescue operation, and he's going to tell us what he found.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. My name is Amir N6ADL in Citrus Heights, and I'm going to do a short presentation about my short experience helping in support of animal rescue operations during the Caldor fire in Eldorado County. So with that, I'll begin. And another note, these photos are provided by Tom in N6H and myself. For the most part, if I catch anything that is otherwise, I'll make a note of that, but I believe that's true. So to touch base on why we were there, Amateur Radio was asked to provide radio communication support when the Animal Control Services was requested by the county, and they realized they did not have adequate radio communications radio communication equipment to provide to the various agencies, volunteers, and other entities that ended up supporting this cause. So what happened was you had agencies from several different counties and even states outside California sent agencies, and their radio communications equipment that was installed in their vehicles were not compatible. So they were either on different modes, different frequencies, or they had preconditioned channels that these animal control officers were not trained on how to reconfigure the radio equipment to work, for example, on the national calling frequency or with other agencies' equipment. So that was the primary reason that we were there, and that's what most of the support we provided was for. All the radio operators had to go in ride-along vehicles with the animal control officers that were in the field every day. Their cell phones were not working very well or at all. So sending a text message sometimes never was received or would take 30 minutes to an hour. So that's why radio played a big help. And then again, a lot of the people that were helping out here were from territories that were outside the area. So they were unfamiliar with the map, the terrain, and how to get around. So that's another huge benefit having local amateur radio operators in the car was able to provide. General tasks, so a lot of the hams were on site at net control, and we were able to provide other assistance as well. For example, loading feed into cars, organizing donated supplies, and other general tasks. This is sort of a preview of what the base of operations, or what we called Iron Mine staging, which was generously provided at a high school that was in session. So it was quite amazing. We were there providing emergency support while the high school was actually in session. Very cool to see that happen. Every morning there was a briefing at 07:30 where everyone that was there for the day would be basically briefed on what happened the previous day, what was going to happen today, goals, projections, weather reports, any emergency notices such as road closures or things to be aware of while you were out in the day. There was also a safety meeting, weather reports, updates on the fire, if the fire areas had changed since the previous day. Teams were made in the mornings during the briefing, and then task sheets were disseminated across the teams so that everyone, basically a team was an animal control officer or two with a ride-along amateur radio officer. That would make up one team, and each team would be given a stack of calls to do for that day, so that you knew what you guys were going to be tasked to do. You could kind of make a strategy amongst yourselves before you were departing the base. There were 2 sergeants. First, we had Sergeant Paul from Los Angeles County providing support, and then after some time, he was called back to his agency's jurisdiction, and Sergeant Kyle took over from Mission Viejo. They were 2 very different people, and they had 2 very different styles of leading, but they both achieved the same mission very well. This is sort of the daily routine in just a few bullets. The briefing at 07:30, and then you guys would, your team would depart in about half an hour. That allowed you time to pack up your supplies, install your radio as a ride-along operator on the car that you're going to be in with the control officers, go through your task sheets, make sure you have all the food, water. If there were special supplies you needed for that day or trip, then you'd load all those up, and then you'd be out by 8 a.m. You'd do all the tasks that you could until lunch, and you had an option to return to base to recoup, maybe have lunch with the other guys, or if you wanted to, you could continue, just eat lunch in the car and go about your day that way. Net control started at 07:30, really started at 800 when the first team was departing, and net control was closed at around 1900 every day. That's when the repeater was allowed back to regular use. Otherwise, traffic was obviously reserved for the affair. At the end of your day, you would submit ICS 214s, which we'll talk about, and also return any vehicle passes. Mind you, if you were in your own vehicle, that means you were not in a marked patrol car. So when you got to roadblocks, for example, National Guard would not recognize your Honda Civic, and they would ask for a vehicle pass. If you could not present a vehicle pass, you would not be allowed. And then the marked patrol cars were allowed in most of the time. We experienced sometimes they would stop the marked patrol cars also and just, say, please state your purpose. What are you guys here for? Because this is an evacuated zone. Just going to go over preparation again before you would leave, so in that, after the briefing, before you're leaving base, you would just make sure you have some of these things. Of course, pre-program a radio before even showing up. Do that several days in advance. Make sure all the channels and the radio schedule makes sense on all your devices. I always did a test with net control before departing as well. I didn't notice everyone doing that, but I think that's a good practice. Just because you're working with not only different people, but your antenna is going to be installed on a car that you've never installed it on, and your radio is going to be providing services in an area that it may not have operated in. So you want to make sure you can contact the repeater and those things, because you may be unfamiliar with these things. And the task sheets that we discussed being handed out in the teams, each team was only provided a single copy of each task. So say I had 5 tasks, and we were in 3 different cars because there's 2 animal control officers and a ride-along ham. There's more than 1 vehicle involved. So one vehicle is going to have a stack of task sheets, and the other vehicle is not going to have any information unless everyone takes pictures of the task sheets on your own phone before you leave, and then everyone can reference those during the day. That was a pretty small detail, but very helpful to do every day. There were 12-hour shifts, so pack a lot of water and a lot of nutrition accordingly, just in case you don't have an opportunity to return to base. Eldorado County Amateur Radio Club spearheaded this service, and they provided their Aries trailer, which was very impressive in outfit for probably much more than what we utilized it for. We utilized it just for 2-meter communications, so just 2-meter radios out of a pneumatic telescoping mast that was at least, I'd say 30 feet tall. Very impressive rig, and it had a nice comfortable couch for everyone at net control, and it was a very, very well thought out plan set up also at the high school in Iron Mine staging. 2 or 3 operators were at net control at all times. So some days that would mean 4 people would rotate shifts, maybe 2 at a time. This is just some equipment that I had. It's an example of what you may want to bring at one of these events. I provided the animal control officers in my team each a handheld radio. They were not used except for car-to-car, basically GMRS communication is all the ACOs could use them for. But like I said, you're riding along in one vehicle while the team has a total of 2 vehicles. So having simple handheld walkie-talkies went a long way because the animal control officers were able to communicate between each other. The handheld radios, I brought a mobile charger just in case. You could substitute several spare batteries for the car charger. Mobile magnetic antenna, that's really great, but just be aware that a lot of vehicles are difficult to mount magnetic antennas onto. Fortunately, animal control vehicles have large metal containers in the back, so even the Ford vehicles that don't accept magnet mounts, I was able to get my magnet mount on the metal containers in the back that typically hold animals or food, what have you. The external battery was another really critical thing to have. As a ride-along operator, you're not in your own vehicle. Maybe you are, but if you're not, you probably don't want to hook up your radio equipment to somebody else's vehicle, especially if they're not the owner, you don't own them, it's an agency vehicle, government vehicle, just liability, possibility of shorting out your radio or their system, their fuse block, whatever. A simple external battery to power your radio, and then that escapes any connecting to their vehicle. So the only connection to their vehicle was the magnet on top, mobile radio at my feet in a lunch pail, running to a battery also in the lunch pail. Very quick, very easy, very portable, and it works very well. Also, at least in this, because it was a wildfire situation, pants were required, boots were not required, but I would highly recommend them. Closed-toe shoes were required. And having a call sign or name tag, it's not required, but it was very helpful to have. There's a lot of people from a lot of different areas and different backgrounds, and having a name on your chest just helps them remember who you are, and they feel more comfortable talking to you and maybe approaching you and that sort of thing. So that was a good idea. As a ride-along radio operator, you were communicating with net control for 12 hours practically. Every 30 minutes you're required to check in just to make sure that you guys are okay and there's no update on your tasks. If there was anything that was not planned or a part of your scheduled plan in the morning that comes up, you would report that. For example, if you find a wild animal, you stop, you report to net control, hey, we're stopping, we're doing this. And then, when you arrive somewhere, when you depart somewhere, you always check in and give those updates. We still haven't touched on the ICS 214, but that's basically a sheet that would be required to be submitted by all field operators. And for the animal control officer or whoever you're riding along with in support of, for them to fill that out while they're doing their duties is kind of challenging. So as a ride along, you can fill out the ICS 214 while you're doing your ham duties, and that really benefits the whole team at the end of the day. It saves a lot of time on paperwork, and you can get your notes down while they're driving. You also have the opportunity to provide mapping. If you have a paper map, that's recommended. GPS is not really strong because, again, your cell phone is not very strong out there. And you may be asked to help with other things. I heard of hams that were helping literally grab animals, put them in cars, feed horses, chase pigs, feed goldfish. They were getting out of the car and putting their hands on animals. That was allowed and okay. It was welcomed, which was a surprise to me, but that was very nice. Okay, so this is the ICS 214 or activity log. A generic form. It has date and time fields and what your task was. So you would record times when you did the tasks that you were assigned in the morning, as well as any incidentals. If any animals needed evacuated, transporting, or if you found any animals that were deceased, then you would also have to note an incident number, which you would have to request from net control, and net control would walk across base camp to the sergeant and say, hey, this is what's going on and we need an incident number. And then they would relay that back to you. You'd put it on your sheet, and that was that. It was pretty straightforward, pretty generic form. Teams, on average, completed about 8 to 10 calls per day, and there were about 4 teams every day, 3 to 4 teams. So, 30 to 40 calls per day in total. And there's a lot of room on this form, so I was taking notes on directions at one point. It's not really bad if you just take notes on this and submit it. They're okay with that. This is an example of one of the activity cards that we were assigned. This was not actually one that my team was assigned, rather another team. But this is a real screenshot. Some information's been redacted for privacy and security, obviously. But you could see in the description, the memo is animal officer left behind a 150-pound pig. Can you please go pick it up? There's 4 feral cats. Please find food in the backyard, and we left a water hose running. So homeowners have the opportunity to provide a lot of detail to the animal control. And so if you have a hidden key for animal control to access your home, you can write that or tell that to dispatch, and they'll relay that information to the animal control officer. So when they arrive, they know where the house key is, how to get in, where your cat is, how many fish you have, etc. It's a very efficient method of passing information along. But homeowners have to relay that information to their county animal control or animal department before the emergency, or I guess in emergencies, maybe during. We received a lot of calls that were coming in. People did not know that we were here doing this, so while we were there, we were getting calls coming in, hey, I didn't tell you before, but could you please go do this because I have animals here, and we were helping those people as well. This is a photo of what's called an ICS 231. It's a placard that would not be used by amateur radio operators. However, you could gain a lot of information by reading it, and it would behoove you to understand what information is on here in these sort of scenarios. Firefighters communicate all types of information. I did a little bit of research on this. So like, for example, that A at the top of the image on the yellow placard, that A is for access. It's the primary, most critical thing that you need to know if you can access this property or not. So having a slash through it like that, as opposed to a circle, is a clear indication there's no access to this property, And then there's a lot of other information, count of people, any animals, etc. They have the opportunity to write notes on here and transfer information to the next person that arrives on scene. We've seen a lot of these, hundreds of these. If a house didn't have one, it was kind of strange. Some resources that I found and discovered during this experience, local ARES. I knew about ARES, I didn't understand much about it, so I signed up, and I'm really happy to be a part of Placer County ARES now. Join your local ARES if you have the opportunity, and if you want to be involved and be, just in the last couple weeks of being in the ARES, I've received a lot of great information in my email regarding emergency services in our area, and I wasn't getting that information beforehand. So as well, a lot of great training and just information sharing. Amateur Radio Emergency Services is what ARES stands for. There's a guidebook that they have. It's like 100 pages that ARRL produces rather. A lot of great information. They touch base on a lot of these ICS 213s and 241s, and protocols for when you're at a control station, a base of operations, pecking orders, how agencies do things, how they communicate together. Great information. The GMRS Neighborhood Watch is something that I've only heard of in Eldorado County Amateur Radio Club. Other amateur radio clubs in the world may have something like this. I put that on there because I just wanted to briefly discuss that. That's something I didn't consider. There are neighborhood watch groups that run on GMRS, and they're available for non-hams, obviously. You just have to have a GMRS license, or just monitor if you just have a handheld radio. I don't want to get too lengthy on that, but Eldorado County Amateur Radio Club has a great GMRS neighborhood watch program, or several programs in several different neighborhoods, I should say. Really interesting to find that out, and that actually played a huge part in evacuating some of these zones in the Caldor fire, so that was excellent. Radio scanners, of course, to be aware of what's going on around you, and monitor calling frequencies, and nothing beats emergency planning. So those are the resources that I wanted to bring up here. And these are the operators that were both at net control and or in the field during this event. Several different clubs were contacted, and maybe even not contacted, but members contacted Eldorado County to participate. So radio operators from Yolo, Placer, Sacramento, and Eldorado, Amador County, and several other counties were here to help out. And that's the last slide I have. So that's the conclusion of this.
All right, any questions? Question back here, just a moment.
Amir, what was the most interesting incident that you personally had? Were you out chasing warthogs through the snow or what?
No, you're not going to be impressed, Jerry. The most exciting incident I had, I saved a couple dogs that were running around at a high school, and then the the dog owner approached us from afar yelling, "Let go of my dogs." So that was one. The other thing I'd like to mention or make note of, the second day, the most eventful thing that happened my second day out as a ride-along, I thought I seen a bunch of stray cats in front of a lady's door, and she had this long accentuated driveway that was rather challenging for the animal control vehicles, plural, to drive in, and it was one way, and I got out, and they were fake cats, and they were all in front of the door as if they were trying to get inside, and they were fake cats, and the homeowner came out and said, "Hey, what's going on? I'm okay, we're all okay," and I explained to her what I thought I witnessed, and she said, "No, the mountain lions think the same thing, but they're fake." So, yeah, that was it. A lot of people, not a lot, but there were people that did not evacuate, and that was interesting, Jerry. We ran into people that were not supposed to be there, and they were like, "Hey, can you bring us food for our animals or whatever?" But they were there, and so they just didn't evacuate, and that happens, I guess. But yeah, nothing too exciting. Other people had a lot more excitement than I did, but I was just happy to help out.
Any more questions? Questions? Anyone? All right. Thank you very much, Amir.